let's talk about the basic perm wrap. It's our next perm wrap that you're going to be doing. We started off with having our sections from the top, 2 front sides, 2 backs, and your center back. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections. Some people do it in 9. I have enough control with this for me, but if you do more, it's not ever a problem if you go more, as long as you have the same end result. The placement for your rods should be side by side. This is a completed basic perm wrap. There's a couple of points we'd like to talk about. Number 1, there's rod band, rod band. I can see the band in beside each rod. That tells me that the band's not too close to the scalp. It hasn't been twisted, hasn't been pushed down, so it's ready for processing evenly. The rods are side by side. There's not a distance in this area. This is usually a trouble zone. I'm going to explain a little something about that to you in a minute. This is usually a trouble zone, and this is usually a trouble zone. It's because the front, we turn the rods towards the face, and the reason for that is that's general hair growth pattern. We're following that, and as you move back, you'll see where the hair growth pattern changes. So for some people, three rods may be enough. Others, it may be 4 or 5 rods, and it depends on the size of the tool that you're using. So it's based more on the tool and the hair growth pattern as to how many you actually do. But since the mannequin doesn't care, we generally do at least 3 forward. You don't want to go all the way back to the apex because the hair growth pattern is not growing forward from the apex. It's generally just right in that frontal zone. So that's why we do it there. Also, you want to see that these rods are laying flat. They're not bunched up. If we go and we see them standing, sitting on top of each other in this way, usually it tells us 2 things are possible. You had the incorrect subsection. In other words, it was wider than the tool, smaller than the tool you used. If you go too small, then the rod has nowhere to lay, so it ends up bunching up. And if you go too wide, you have spacing in between. And the other thing that can happen is that you have the correct subsection, but you have incorrect position of the hair. And I'll explain that to you in just a minute. So look really quick again. The other thing I want to show you is that we have long rods through here, but short rods in here. And the reason is that the nape narrowed. So as you get to the bottom, you want to have that hair as close to the scalp as possible. If I use a large rod, it's going to pull it away on the outer edges. Only the center of that rod would be flat to the scalp. So we want to do smaller so that we're following the curve of the head. So you may find that you do 6. Your last 3 rows all the way across may be short rods. This one has a short one here and then shorter ones on the sides. I just kind of basically went with what the mannequin had as far as the haircut went as well. So with a client, if the rods are stacked and laid up on top of each other and she has to lay back in the sink, it's very uncomfortable and you're pulling on that hair. Well, remember when we perm hair, that solution has the hair broken down and it's very weak at that point. So if we put stress on the hair when it's broken and not rebuilt from the neutralizer yet, we are really setting ourselves up for breakage on that client's hair, and we don't want to do that. So let's talk about some other points on this perm wrap. Problem zone is in the corner, and generally we rod all of the center, and then we do the back, and then we do the front side. I want you to see this particular subsection, because there's a trick to following the curve of the head. And I don't know if we're going to be able to pick it up good enough. But what I want you to notice is that the back of it is narrow. It's almost like an extended triangle. It's narrow here, and it's wider here. And that little bit of widening at one end and narrowing at the other end is what gets you around the curve. You still want to do that first one with a small rod as well. Remember from your bricklayer, I told you that small rod is how you follow the curvature of the head best. And it's no different now either. So you want to place that paper. Place your second paper. Extend that hair past the paper. And we'll place our rod back in place. You want good tension until you get at least 2.5 times around, and then you can go pretty good, much quicker down the hair. So the other thing I want you to notice is that the ends of these line up with another rod right in the center, all the way down. So if I'm looking and this is not touching another rod here, I've gotten off pattern somewhere. I may have gotten wider sectioning. The other thing I see people do is they place, I'm going to use a different color rod so you can understand. If you get too diagonal, then what you end up with is too much hair in the front. Or if you get this too wide in here. Now, occasionally you get a mannequin that's really wide. You may have a client who has a larger head, and this pattern just doesn't work because these length of these rods are not adjustable. So sometimes in order to have a great wrap here, you still may have extra hair. And it's very much okay to go in and place another rod. If you were on the client floor doing a client, you would just place another one, and we say candlestick one in there to take care of it. If you do it towards the face, it's okay, or you can do it in the back area if that's where it's wide, because it's wider right in here. That might be where you have to do it as well. Ask your instructor where you should handle that, and she'll help you on the floor with it. But for majority of our perm wraps that are basic perm wraps, you will be able to do this without any trouble whatsoever. So do your center, all volume. And I want to tell you one other thing. They're rods straight down. If your rods are half off, then you want to continue with them being half off. That means that the hair's held at 90 when you're doing your placement. So 90 is here. But what people have a tendency to do is this on the back, because it's easier to see your ends. And I want to show you what happens when you do that. So if I start rodding the hair straight up, I'm definitely not in my 90-degree position. This is a 180. And I'll rod it from here down. A couple of things will happen. It's slightly separating already. And the hairs here are not laying as flat. So you can imagine what happens if you're doing that with long hair and it gets longer as you go, then it really looks ruffled up. So generally, we can tell just by walking by sometimes if that hair's been held in the right position or not when you were rodding it. So you can't comb it in that position and then pull it out and rod it either. You have to comb it, place your papers, place your rod, and do it all in that 90-degree position. The other thing you want to do is have your body position center with your work. If I'm rodding here, I need my body in the center of where that rod's going to lay. So I'm lined up center with it, and it will fall in place for me. But if I stand this way and I'm over to the side, I'm going to pull it to the side, even if I'm thinking it looks pretty straight. And the other thing is that if you have uneven tension between your two fingers, in other words, if my left hand and my right hand have uneven tension, it's very easy for this to happen. And what you'll see is this end is loose and this end's tight. That means I had that angled, my body wasn't in the center, and I didn't keep even tension all the way across. So your dominant hand many times will be the side that you move it quicker. So it'll get you offline. So just be aware that that's the point and purpose of staying centered with your work, and that it is your goal to have an even curl pattern. So if you'll notice, if that rod's pulled out at this angle and we put perm solution on it, that hair has to travel from here to curl. This hair didn't travel as far to start curling. So my curl pattern is going to be uneven as well. So the client may wonder why the hair is not holding a curl as well in that one position, but it's because the whole pattern wasn't made consistent and uniform from side to side. So those are some things that you want to think about and watch out for as you're doing your perm wrap. This is the basic. This is the one that you will use the most often. It's also, you think it's just for little old ladies, and it's really not. What goes around comes around. Trends will bring it back. And knowing how to do a good perm wrap will make you lots of money. So we hope that you perfect it, work on your hand dexterity, think about neatness. It's always important to be neat, and do a good job.